When you open your new Bafx Products wireless repeater kit, you will get one instruction manual. It covers two different models of the kit. The model you have is the top one, the WLT1. You will also receive a small pack of spare adhesive for your IR receivers and emitters. You'll get one receiver block, one transmitter block, two IR receiver cables, one 4-head emitter cable to control up to 4 devices. You will also get 2 USB power cords for your transmitter and receiver blocks, as well as 2 optionally used power wall adapters for those USB power cables. Your wireless repeater kit does need to be powered at all times in order to use it. It comes with 2 options for powering. You can either power just by the USB cable into a powered USB outlet, or if you don't have a USB outlet to use, you can plug it into one of the included wall adapters and plug into a standard wall outlet. All you do, simply plug your rounded end into the transmitter or receiver block, plug in, and then also on the front of the block is a red power switch, and you got to make sure that your transmitter or receiver block is powered on at all times. If it's not powered on, you're not going to get a signal. Again, you can also choose to power through a USB port, like so, and press your power button and you're good to go. Now for setting up your kit. The receiver block, this one here, is the block you'll want to place. It's the block that receives the signal from the transmitter block. This is the block you're going to place near the end device that you want to control, in this case our Denon receiver. So the receiver block is going to receive the IR signal and transmit it to your end device. So this is the block you'll want near the devices you're trying to control. On the back of this block, you'll note that there's an emitter port and an IR receiver port. So on this block, you'll plug your 4-headed emitter cable into the emitter outlet, and then your emitter heads attached to your device to allow it to control it. Your transmitter block is going to go near the end of your setup, so by your TV most likely, where you want to control your end device from. The back of this block just has a port for your IR receiver. So in there, we're going to plug in one of our IR receivers. Now that you have your cables plugged in and your repeater kit powered on, you just want to do a quick check to make sure that everything's working properly and that your receiver block is getting the signal from the transmitter block. To do this, you'll note that on the front of the receiver block there's an IR status light. That light will blink blue when it gets an IR signal from your IR receiver here. So if I press a button on the remote, this light should blink blue to indicate that the transmitter block or receiver block is getting a signal from the transmitter block. So I press a button, it's blinking blue. That means we should be good to go. Okay, so we're going to give you a quick and dirty demonstration of the final setup of the kit. We have our IR receiver plugged into the transmitter block here, which is the block that only has the IR receiver port on it. And your IR receiver needs to be within the line of sight of your remote control at all times. So this is going to go in the room where you want to control your end device from. Most likely this will be near your TV. So for demonstration purposes of the video, I'm just going to move this way off screen here so it's, we don't get any confusion with the signals. And then we have our receiver block here, which we have the emitter heads plugged into. The receiver block is going to stay near your end devices you're trying to control. And you're just going to attach one emitter head over the IR receiver on your device, and you should be good to go. That said, each emitter cable comes with 4 heads, and you'll notice they're kind of grouped in twos like this. Obviously your devices are not that close together, so you can actually just pull them apart like that real gently. I've already done that with my other 2 emitter heads here. So I'm going to attach one of the emitter heads over the IR receiver on our device here, and then I'm going to tuck our unused emitter heads behind the receiver. And now when I take my remote and I go way back here, I can change the volume. As you can see, it's changing. If I take the emitter head off and now attempt to change the volume, I don't get any volume change. So looks like we're working there. Again, just stick your emitter over the IR receiver on the end device, and you can then control it from another room. Another great feature of the wireless repeater kit that I want to point out to you here is that you notice your transmitter block, the one that your main IR receiver plugs into, only has a port for the IR receiver. But the block you put near your end devices here, and that you plug your emitter cable into, also has a port for an IR receiver. And you may be wondering why this is. Oh, let me just take my emitter head off here. And this is kind of cool feature. So if we have our AV receiver, say down in the living room, and we want to tuck it in the cabinet down there, but we also have this AV receiver sending signals upstairs, what we can do is we can control the AV receiver using our wireless kit from upstairs, right? But it's also in the cabinet downstairs, so we can't control it from downstairs. So this extra IR receiver port will allow you to plug in the second IR receiver that came with your kit and wire it outside of your cabinet so that you can leave it in the cabinet downstairs and still control your end device with the wireless repeater kit. So you're probably likely wondering, where on earth do I put these stupid emitter heads on this device? Because you can't just stick your emitter head on the middle of the device and hope it works. You have to put your emitter head usually over the IR receiver on your device. So you need to find out where the IR receiver on your device is. There are 2 ways to go about figuring out where to place your emitter heads. My personal favorite, the way I think is the easiest, is the trial and error method. And the reason is because placing your emitter head directly over the IR receiver on a device isn't always the best spot for the emitter head, believe it or not. Sometimes if the emitter head is too close to the IR receiver, it can actually overpower the IR receiver on your device and not work. So my favorite way to do this is the trial and error method. And to do this, you should get the kit set up and working properly so that you know that the signal is being transmitted from one block to the other, as we discussed earlier. And then have one person in the room where you have the IR receiver that's connected to the repeater kit located, pressing, say, the volume button on your remote control pointed at the IR receiver. Now, the person that's near the end device is going to hold an emitter and slowly move that emitter head around the face of the device while the other person's pressing the button on the remote control until they start getting a response from the device, that's where you plop the emitter head. So for example here I'm going to start pressing the volume buttons, and then I'm just going to move the emitter head around until I get a response. So if I have the emitter head over here, I'm pressing volume, I'm moving the emitter head. Oh, I'm getting a response, as you can see. So I could actually stick the emitter head right there. Oh, maybe not. Oh. So it's kind of working right there, but that's obviously not where our IR receiver is. So we'll keep moving it around a little bit. Seems to be working right about there. So, oops, I will stick the emitter head there. Let's try this again here. And boom, we're in business. So if you just hold that emitter head about an inch, 2 inches in front of the device and move it around, once your device starts responding, that's usually about where you can stick your emitter head. So right about there, and we're good to go. Some devices are a little more particular about where you have the emitter head placed. On this one you notice that it started working when we were about here, but not really. As we started getting over, it started working a lot better. So generally anywhere in this area is a good place to put the emitter head. Some devices though, it might be very finicky where having the emitter head placed there won't work, but if you move it over just like a 1/4 inch, it'll start working. So sometimes it takes a little bit of patience. Usually it's pretty easy though. The other way to figure out where to put your emitter head is to get yourself a flashlight and hold it pretty much flat up against the face of the device and slowly move the flashlight over the face of the device while you're looking in the side here so that you can see the components behind the face of the device. In doing this, you're not going to be able to see it on the camera here, but in doing this, I can see that our IR receiver is right there on the device, hence why it started working when we were putting the emitter pretty much anywhere here. So that's another way to find out where you want to put your emitter head. So generally the IR receiver is going to look like a little dome behind there. It's going to look like a little eye facing out towards you. You'll know it when you see it. But that's, like I say, the first method is my favorite method because there's no question about where to put it. You know, it's just the device starts responding when your emitter head is in the right spot and you stick it on. So one issue you may come across is that the cables you get with your repeater kit aren't long enough. Your IR receiver cable is about 5 feet in length from tip to tip, about 4 foot 10 inches for the cable itself. And depending where your wall outlets are in the room or whatnot, 5 feet may not be long enough, so you need to get a longer receiver cable. To do that, all you need is a headphone extension cable. That is a stereo cable. A stereo cable is one that has the 2 rings around the tip of it like that. Preferably you should get one that's shielded. And you can extend the IR receivers and emitters up to a couple hundred feet. Though with the wireless kit you really don't need to do that. Usually 10 to 25 feet is enough. So just get a stereo headphone extension cable. You can plug your receiver or emitters right into it and you've extended the length of your cable. That said, I told you that a stereo cable has the 2 black rings around the end. You'll notice our emitter cable is a mono cable and only has 1 black ring on it. You can use a stereo cable to also extend your emitter cable, but you cannot use a mono cable to extend your IR receiver cable. So we just recommend going with a stereo headphone extension with 3.5mm jacks, and it will work to extend either the IR receiver or emitter cables. One thing I will note about the headphone extension cables is don't buy the super cheap extension cables, 25 feet for $2. Those tend to have many problems with them that won't properly transmit your IR signal, so make sure you buy a decent quality headphone extension cable. Sometimes those super cheap ones will work fine, but we do see a lot of problems with the super cheap ones, so just get yourself a decent extension and you can plug these in and you're good to go. When attaching your emitter head to your devices, it's very important that you only have one emitter head attached to each device, and that if you have any unused emitter heads, that those emitter heads are hidden off to the side and aren't pointing at the devices you're trying to control. Also, it's important that your end device is completely out of view of the remote control. Why is this? You would think that having more emitter heads on your device is going to be better because more is always better, right? Unfortunately, not in this case. IR signals have a lot of information on them, and if your device gets more than one IR signal at a time, it has a hard time interpreting that information properly. So if our device has more than one emitter head on it, sending multiple signals to the device, or if we have both the remote control and the repeater kit sending a signal to the device, and now I try to change the volume on the device, it's not going to change because our receiver is getting a signal both from the repeater kit and from the remote control. But as soon as I take that receiver away, I can start changing the volume again. So it's very important to ensure that your devices are completely out of view of your remote control when using it with the repeater kit, and it's also very important that any unused emitter heads are tucked off behind or away from the end device so they're not pointing at it. Whatever you do, if you have unused emitter heads, do not cut them off. Cutting off unused emitter heads can actually make the entire emitter cable not work altogether. So what you'll want to do is just take your unused emitter heads and tuck them off to the side of your device and just leave them there.